My name is Ghostboy259, and I recently found a quest in the Shivering Isles that I don't really see anyone talking about. One of my all-time favorite games is The Elder Scrolls IV: Oblivion. I was so afraid of it the first time I watched some family friends play it at just 11 or 12 years old, and it took me well into my teens to finally play and beat the game for myself, often muting the sound so nothing could scare me, and having good old fin gleam on my head so I could always see in the dark. Now that I'm 30 years old, I genuinely cannot believe there's a remake out. I don't have it. I can't afford it. And also it just sounds really buggy as well. So I'll wait for it to go on sale one day. But it's genuinely awesome to see so many people rediscover this world that I have been in love with for so long. Even now when I'm bored or maybe I just need a few minutes to relax, I'll hop in a save where I've used cheats to max out all of my stats and I'll just slaughter tons of innocent people. Why yes, I'm doing just fine, thanks for asking. Even when I'm not destroying all of the Imperial Marketplace, I love to just no-clip around and see what happens when I sequence break something, and almost every time I do, I discover something really new and fun. Like I had no idea there was this little balcony in the Anvil Castle, which makes a great entry point to kill everyone inside. Or even just going through city walls without entering that zone just to see what happens. And don't even get me started on the test cells. Sometimes I get so deep into them, I kind of get creeped out by it. Does anyone else experience this? One time I was exploring all the chaos I had left behind
Someone's been murdered.
when I had the idea for something I had never considered. What if I went to the Shivering Isles and killed everyone there? If for some reason you're not aware, the Shivering Isles is the expansion to Oblivion. Not the DLC, we weren't using that term yet, it is an expansion. In middle school, I literally went out and rebought the game on disc because it had a separate disc containing Shivering Isles on it, which you would download onto your console. And I remember I had a few kids asking me to borrow it, so I was briefly popular for about 15 minutes. The Shivering Isles is genuinely one of the greatest expansions of any game ever, mostly noted for its really fun questline and environment, which was filled with the wackiest characters imaginable, and a world where the rules didn't really make sense, although they kind of made sense. A playthrough of Oblivion just doesn't feel complete without a playthrough of Shivering Isles. It's separate from the rest of the game, but it feels like an essential part. Shivering Isles is also pretty fundamentally different from Oblivion because in my opinion, it fixes a lot of the issues that Oblivion had with pretty much all of its quests, in that it had choices to make. Now I don't mean Dark Brotherhood choices like whether you go for the bonus on a contract or not, or when the main quest says hand over a Daedric artifact, which one do you choose? I mean real tangible choices that you make you want to replay the game just to see if there's any differences. Like, how will you get past the Gatekeeper? How will you torture the Lost Adventurers? Do you kill the Duke of Mania or the Duchess of Dementia? Do you save the Mazkin or the Oriel? Besides just the characters being really interesting, I do think this is what makes the Shivering Isles so much fun compared to Oblivion, and why you should always end your Oblivion playthroughs with a journey to the Isles. You have so many options on how you can mold this world that you eventually rule over, and you truly feel like the Mad God. It feels like it's the biggest piece missing from the base game. And this design philosophy doesn't stop with the main quest, it goes on to the side quest too. And if you actually look at the list of side quests here on Elder Scrolls Fandom, just kidding, please, I've been using the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages since before some of you were born, and statistically that's actually true. But if you look at the list of side quests, there's not really that many, but even then there are choices to be made. I think the most famous one is without a doubt the Great Divide, where you go to the settlement called Split and find the 5 residents have been split into 2 versions, so there's 10 residents, and you get to decide which side lives and which side you kill off. But admittedly, very recently whilst wandering around Shivering Isles, I stumbled upon a quest I had somehow never seen or heard of before in all my years. And when I searched it on YouTube, there was no one really talking about it. A few old Let's Plays, a few old guides, but considering how it feels like over the last 20 years, every quest in this game has its own goddamn 20-hour essay, I was really surprised at how much this one lacked anything. No one was talking about it. And I think it's interesting for a few reasons. One, because I just really like the story of it. One, because it has some really cool, not obvious choices you can make. And one, because I think there's a mechanic in here that is not seen anywhere else in all of Oblivion. But it's also not really like anything else in the Shivering Isles. It's maybe more akin to that of vanilla Oblivion, so it stands out a lot among this weird, mad world because it's really dark. And not like in a haha, this guy is funny, let's make fun of the people in dementia who are all depressed dark, like really dark. So today I just wanted to do a bit of a deep dive on this one specific quest from an expansion from a game that came out over 20 years ago. This is the Ghosts of Vitharn. While there is some rumored dialogue that can get you started on this quest, the best way to do it is simply just to explore the Shivering Isles and stumble upon it yourself. When you arrive at Vitharn, you'll find ghosts fighting among the remains of an old castle, the fanatics attacking the castle, and the ghosts of the Vitharn soldiers defending it. While you can't interact with the Vitharn soldiers, should the fanatics live, they will attack you and you'll have to fight back. This is honestly most of the combat you'll do in the entire quest. Something Shivering Isles does rather well is that the quests don't always need to be attack this thing to complete the quest. You can just be wandering around the streets torturing people but not engaging in any actual combat for a good chunk of time. The main quest of Shivering Isles has so many dungeons in it and so many encounters, so it's kind of just nice to have some side stuff that doesn't focus on it too heavily. Around the half-sunken remains of Vitharn, we'll see chained doors closed by supernatural forces, with the only opening being inside the base of a tree. Making our way through, we'll be attacked by the occasional fanatic and see parts of the castle half taken over by the environment, standing still in time. In base Oblivion, a lot of the destroyed and weathered castles are just little forts. You don't really get a whole lot, or they're all dungeons underground, which are for the most part preserved. So it's nice to see something with considerable size to it where you can see rooms being torn apart and things falling over. Once we manage to get inside, we're confronted by the ghost of Count Syrian, who tells us the history of the castle.
I am Count Syrian, and you have violated the inner sanctum of Vitharn. What say you in your defense? Centuries ago, Vitharn was overrun by fanatics. We were soft and failed to defend ourselves. I was the weakest of all. Now, the shades of my people are cursed by Sheogorath to repeat the final moments of their failures over and over again. You must help us break the cycle of torment. Help my people overcome their weakness and defend Vitharn from the fanatics.
So what we have here is a moment in time. Literally. The ghosts and residents of Vitharn are all trapped at the moment of their doom. The soldiers outside are all reliving their final moments of failure for eternity, and while the fanatics head towards the gate, we never actually see them inside the castle, probably because it would be rather hard to program. So while the soldiers outside are all reliving the moments of their death, the citizens are inside reliving the moments of fear and dread right before theirs. Walking around and listening to the tortured spirits is really off-putting. In casual conversation, they'll talk to each other and complain about the noise, still acting like the rich, snobby people that got them killed, but when talking to them directly, they simply tell you that they believe they have earned their doom.
Could someone muffle the door? The sounds of combat are disturbing me. I sat here and feasted while others fought. Thus I earned my doom.
I used my piety to avoid joining the defense. Thus I earned my doom.
Was my sin so great that I must suffer for all eternity?
God, there's something about the delivery of the lines that just, ugh. I'm a huge fan of stories like this, long, tortured souls who are trapped and forced to pay for an eternity for one small mistake or miscalculation or bad choice. Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep being an obvious one for those who know, Soma being another great one. Something about it just being eternally alone with your thoughts, forever tortured by your past decisions, wishing you could change just one small thing. I don't know, man. It's the scariest torture I could possibly think of. It also shows us this really evil, devilish side of Sheogorath. I mean, Sheogorath does some pretty messed up things, but they make us laugh, so it's okay, and he yells cheese, so it's funny, but there's no humor here, unlike the rest of the Shivering Isles. It's very bleak and dark, and these people are just suffering, and we have no idea for how long they've been in this cycle. There's no laughter, there's no real quirkiness. Even the quirky characters we meet later still have this dark, tortured soul quality to them. As awful as this is going to sound to say out loud, and hindsight is 2020, we live in a very different era now. While the citizens of Dementia are suffering, I think the intention behind it is that you're supposed to kind of laugh at how sad and depressed they are. But here, these characters aren't really that quirky. They are still kind of just, you feel really bad for them. It's a really uneasy feeling, and it shows that Sheogorath is very much a powerful, sick, and twisted Daedric lord. Regardless of how these people messed up, they already paid the price with their lives. This extra immortality is just intense. The one thing I don't love is how drastic the NPCs are when you talk to them versus overhearing conversations.
It is the role of lesser men to fight for those of noble blood. I went about my business while others fought. Thus I earned my doom.
It feels like they weren't quite on the same page when writing these dialogues, like suddenly the gravity of the situation only happens when you talk to them directly. I think just having them all be tortured and suffering would have been a lot better, which is an awful sentence to say out loud out of context. But also, if they're stuck in a loop, I suppose it makes sense that their original thoughts at the time still linger, like they were bad people who didn't want to go help. So that's how they stay, and then only when you talk to them do you get to break through the facade and you see like the insides of them, and they're actually like, oh god, no, I'm suffering. Otherwise you get into this whole thing about like free will, like why aren't you doing anything to change your circumstances, and do ghosts have free will? And then we get into a whole other conversation about that stuff, and that's just not the door I'm really interested in. Inside the castle, there's also a priest giving an unending sermon to two very loyal listeners, an armorer, and outside are several protectors of the gate, including 3 ones the Count specifically wants you to help. Like I said, these 3 characters are a little bit more of that Shivering Isles quirkiness, but I don't know, it's something about being in this situation, I can't bring myself to appreciate the quirkiness that much. They're dying for eternity constantly. There are 3 mini quests you need to do in order to change the future, change the past, break the cycle, let's say. There's Althel, Desideratus, Aeneas, and Hloval Dreth. Names that just roll off the tongue. I'm actually not sure if anyone actually says these names at all. As the fanatics enter, there are 4 that initially come in and open the gate for the rest to come in and kill the rest of the soldiers, and in order to stop that from happening, Desideratus needs to hold his ground and not let people through, Althel needs arrows to shoot, and Dreth is out of magicka and needs more. Apparently he took the Atronach birth sign. You can do them in any order, you can do them all at once if you want to, nothing really changes that, but I'll just cover them in what I think is the most interesting order. Hloval Dreth, which I have no idea if I'm saying that correctly, needs more magicka, and we need a way to get that to him.
Power! I need power, unless you can give me the magicka to help these soldiers get out of my way. The fanatics? What's to understand? They were just after my power, but it's mine, all mine. They wanted me to convert Vitharn, but I fooled them. I put them on the list. Oh yes, they're on the list now. Because we refused to convert, they lay siege to Vitharn. If they had agreed to let me rule, I would have helped them. But now, they're on the list.
As of right now, he'll try to cast spells, have no luck, and instantly die to death. In conversations, others will allude that he is no normal mage, but there's not really a solution there. There are 2 ways to solve this problem, neither of which come with a quest marker. In fact, all of these quests don't come with a quest marker, which is really cool, but also you're confined and trapped in a very small area during this quest, so maybe that's why they felt more comfortable with doing that. If you explore around, you'll find a mausoleum. It's a really cool yet creepy place where the corpses of the former Counts of Vitharn just lay there, bare feet, eyes open. Hey. It never occurred to me until just now that no one dies with their eyes closed in Oblivion. I don't like it. There's loot and other things in here, probably nothing you need at this point of the game, but if you're just looking around at first, you probably won't find anything to help you. It looks like this is maybe just a place to add to the ambience, but if you happen to look up and see the ghostly Welkid stone and go up to it and grab it, then that will do. Hand it over, and Dreth is back at it again with the white vans. I would love to know the percentage of people who wandered aimlessly and never saw it, or simply looked up a guide because it's not immediately obvious what you're looking for. The idea that there's a Welkid stone that exists that is specifically a ghostly Welkid stone because normal ones don't work is a little confusing, and I'm sure someone will have a fun time with that in the lore as to how this Welkid stone specifically became a ghost stone, but I'll leave that for someone else. The other version is way more interesting and probably more common. Earlier I mentioned the pastor delivering an endless sermon, and his name is Anglor. If we head back to Anglor, we'll find out that Dreth actually gave him orders to head to the chapel and pray when the fanatics first started invading. And even when the fanatics broke in and started slaughtering the residents of the castle, he just stood there continuing to pray until he himself was killed. Of course, in this reality, the fanatics never make it in, only the outside defenders are doomed to repeat their death. So as a result, Anglor is just stuck in this never-ending prayer session. He also mentions that once he sacrificed his own magicka to help Dreth, which means you could probably do the same. And after searching around and hitting a switch, you can find his weird secret office, which why a man of faith would need a little hidden office is another discussion entirely. Let's not go there. But here you can find a dagger of depletion. Anglor is less than happy that you've stolen it, but he's helpless to stop you, which is funny. And you guessed it, the second way to solve this part of the quest is to give Dreth the dagger, in which he will proceed to stab you to take some magicka, thus resolving his part in the battle. Now luckily you don't need to stand there every single loop and be stabbed. For some reason he just has magicka from now on. I don't know how that works. As I mentioned earlier, I really like that there aren't any quest markers. Maybe it's because the area you're in is so small, there's only so many places to go, but Oblivion is so notorious for just a lot of quest markers everywhere. Even if there's a book behind you, they put a quest marker on it. And I also really like that there's two completely different solutions, and I'd really be curious as to which one is more common. On one hand, you actually have to explore the crypt, which you don't even really know if what you're looking for is in there in the first place. Then you have to look around and actually find the Welkid stone to use it. And you can actually do the entire quest line without ever going into the crypt. No one even tells you it's there. You have to look for it. It's not glaringly obvious that what you need is going to be inside, so you might not even think to do it. Alternatively, if you explore the castle outside of the areas it forces you in, and you find your way to the priest and talk to him, you'll find out he's connected to Dreth on some level, and as you turn around and find the secret button, you'll also have gone on a mini adventure. Nothing points you to Anglor. Dreth doesn't say, hey, go talk to Anglor or do anything like that. There's no quest marker or anything here that updates that he has a connection with Dreth. You don't find a journal. You just have to go talk to him to find out that there's something connecting the two. Another thing I like about it, and maybe you disagree, maybe you're in the other camp, so I'd love to know. I kind of like it that when you find a solution, it maybe doesn't occur to you that there's another solution. Like, I imagine most players who found the Welkid stone probably thought it was just a bit of a treasure hunt and that they just found the answer. And they might even be frustrated with well, how was I supposed to know that? How was I supposed to know that was there? This one part just forces you to explore and talk to people and consider their words and to look around, which is quite contradictive of the original Oblivion game, where you really do get a quest marker for everything. Our next mini quest is Althel's Arrows.
1, 2, 3. I need my arrows. 5, 7, 11. I can't get them. 13, 17, 19. If I leave, who will keep up the count? 23, 29, 31, 1, 6, 1. I was the first to spot the invaders. 8, 0, 3. I was on patrol when I saw their skirmishers marching toward Vitharn. 3, 9, 8. I rode back as fast as I could to tell Count Syrian of the danger. 8, 7, 4. He went and hid. 9, 8, 9. 14, 11. I must guard the lever that opens the gate. 9, 4. If the gate is opened, the fanatics will overrun Vitharn.
Althel seems to be really into numbers and counting. What she's actually counting, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the numbers are supposed to mean anything. She does pi and the Fibonacci thing, but I don't know if it's meant to mean something beyond that. Regardless, the reason she doesn't have any arrows is because a bat gro-Orkul, who is in charge of the armory.
I'm keeping Vitharn's weapons and armor safe from thieves and miscreants. I can't give you any arrows because then the armory would be empty. Then what would I do if someone needed some arrows?
He basically refuses to give any arrows out because he doesn't want them to get damaged or lost, and then if he has no arrows, he can't give anyone else arrows, which maybe don't put this guy in charge of things. This is kind of sad because Althel lets a lot of people down. The fanatics run right by her in order to open the gate, and it's not even her fault. She didn't even have the equipment that she tried to get, but it also is funny that she kind of just stands there and gets stabbed and then doesn't try to deviate from that. Like, every bandit with a bow in this game also has a dagger. Come on, you should have one of those at least. There's only one way to get the arrows. You have to break into the armory by either picking the lock or finding the key around the castle, sneak in, grab the arrows without getting caught. It's ridiculously easy once you figure out what to do. That's not the real reason I like this quest, however. In fact, that part is terribly boring and way too easy. If you're at this stage in the game, you probably don't even need to crouch. You could just walk in, take the arrows, and leave without even thinking twice about it. But what I really like about this quest is what happens if you get caught. Oblivion doesn't really have cutscenes. They keep you in perspective of your character, much like a Half-Life game, and occasionally they'll freeze you so that someone else can talk without you jumping around and ruining the scene. But for the most part, when the game gives you freedom, you have freedom. You can do what you want with it. If you try to sneak by someone, the consequences for getting caught is usually combat, or if it's a guard, you get arrested. But I can't recall a single moment in this game where you would get a message like, you got caught, you failed the quest over, try again. And that's mostly because of Oblivion's design philosophy. It's a starter RPG, and for many, that's exactly what it did for them. It introduced them to a world of RPGs they may not have been able to discover otherwise. But even then, sometimes in games that are meant to be harder than Oblivion, you'll actually have a stealth section, and if you get caught, it simply takes you right back to the beginning of that section to try again. You have to stealth through. That is the only option. In Oblivion, the solution is simply to do it a different way. Combat versus sneak. If you're doing a Dark Brotherhood quest or Thieves Guild quest, you forfeit a bonus, or you can get kicked out if you don't do things the ideal way. But you can't necessarily fail these quests, or at least it's very hard to. And that's why I find the mechanics of this section so interesting. If Bat gro-Orkul, which is a crazy name, catches you while you try to get the arrows, he hits you with a teleportation spell, putting you right outside the door, relocking the door automatically if you don't have the key, and forcing you to just do it again. And to my recollection, this is the only time in this game that it ever does this. It gives you a clean second try. There is no downside. There are no consequences to messing up. It's not even mentioned that you tried to steal his arrows. He's not mad at you because he can't be. Outside of guards arresting you, they almost never teleport you somewhere where you don't physically move yourself, unless it's a very special circumstance like in a quest. But this is one of the few instances, if maybe the only in the entire game, where you have to do a non-combat goal and there is no alternate way to accomplish it. The only thing you can do is sneak in and get those arrows, and you cannot finish the game without it, so you have to just start over and try again. So rather than the game popping up and saying, hey, sorry, you failed the quest, it just teleports you back to the beginning and you redo it all over again. But because Oblivion doesn't like doing that, they just have the character teleport you. Game can't make you fight the ghosts. It couldn't throw you in jail. There are no other negative consequences that worked within the story, and so for the first time, the game just teleports you away and says, hey, try again. I'd love to know if anyone can think of any other quest in Oblivion that does this. I asked a few friends, none of them could remember because they don't know the game quite as much as I do, but they did say they can't remember it ever happening in Skyrim either, which is pretty similar in design, so I don't know. You give Althel the arrows back and all is well on her end. It's the easiest of the three, there's really not much to it. Our last quest is for Desideratus, which I hate saying that name, and he is disgruntled because his betrothed is in danger and must be saved.
My betrothed! I must save her!
We tried to gather the townsfolk into the keep, but it was too late. I barely had time to find my betrothed and get us inside. The gate was closed behind us. I heard the townsfolk pounding on the gate, but not for long, because then the screaming began. I'm supposed to defend the courtyard against the fanatics. I'm supposed to stop them from getting inside the keep.
As a result, when the fanatics breach the gate, he runs back inside the keep every time in order to rescue and protect her. It's quite a romantic story, really, until you realize that his betrothed is nothing more than a doll. Back inside the castle, you'll find a place with lots of beds, and lying on one of the beds, presumably his, is the doll. Now you might think it's as easy as handing him the doll. I think it's very instinctive for us to all just grab the doll and give it back to him, but that only puts the doll in danger, you see. So doing so will cause him to run back into the castle, place the doll back on the bed, and then the cycle just repeats all over again.
My beloved, I'll carry her away to safety. Should the fanatics get her, I would have to kill them all!
I really love this because it both makes perfect sense that you would try to hand him the doll, but it also makes perfect sense within the story that he would just put it back because that's where he believes it's the most safe. It again forces the player to walk around and see what is available. Most likely, as you walk into the crypt, and I think there's one other area, you'll see a little fire, and you'll get a pop-up about how the fire beckons you over, and you can destroy the doll that way. Sometimes the pop-up comes up earlier when you don't even have the doll. I did a few game-breaking things with this character, so maybe that's my fault. Maybe I accidentally triggered something I wasn't supposed to. But this is by far going to be the most common option that people pick, just because there is a pop-up that kind of says, hey, there's a fire. What if you threw the doll in the fire?
You burned her? She's gone? You've driven all meaning from my life. I shall throw myself upon the swords of the fanatics so that I may join her sooner.
If you tell him you've destroyed the doll, he will be enraged, but also he won't have a reason to run anymore, and that will complete his quest. The other option, which is again not something I imagine most people would find on their own, is giving a fanatic the doll, which will cause him to go crazy and attack the fanatic. I can't even begin to imagine having someone confront me with an axe trying to attack me or attack my friend and me stopping to talk to him. It never even once crossed my mind, so I'm a little undecided on how I feel about this one. On one hand, I don't know if there's any other point in Oblivion where you want to talk to someone who is actively being aggressive, even if it's not at you, so I don't know why anyone would ever think this, but at the same time, if you figure this out on your own, you would feel like an absolute genius, and again, the story logic makes sense. You give the fanatic the doll, he will attack the fanatic. It's as easy as that. Again, it's another quest that gives you two ways to do things, something base Oblivion doesn't do that often, and one is really interesting and something I just would not expect. I said it before, but I would bet that a large portion of people who did this quest threw the doll in the fire and had no idea you could talk to a fanatic to give it to them. After you complete these 3 mini quests, Count Syrian will ask you to don his incredibly ugly helmet and help combat the fanatics yourself, which is the only other combat section of this thing. It's kind of funny because he's still too cowardly to help. I don't know if it's because he can't leave the castle in ghost form or what, but basically you have to save everyone from their eternal hell, and he does kind of help initiate that, but he still gets to be at peace despite not doing anything to make up for his cowardness. At least the other ones were out there trying. They just had other things get in the way, but he just sat there and watched, and he still gets peace. After the battle and killing the fanatics, the Count will thank you, you'll get to keep his helmet, and the Ghosts of Vitharn, both citizens and fanatics alike, are finally at rest. The hollowed halls, once filled with chatter, now lay empty. There's nothing left here, there's nothing left to discover, there's no secrets, no cool loot. The castle will now lie empty forever, free from Sheogorath's torment. Overall, I really love this quest. I was shocked at how I had never played it before or even heard of it before, and there's 2 major reasons I love it. First, I love the story. Like I said, anything with characters facing eternal damnation or forced to live some sort of awful time loop, I adore. I don't know what that says about me. Heck, my favorite character in Oblivion / Shivering Isles is actually Daius. For those of you who don't know, and spoilers I guess for the Shivering Isles if you haven't gotten to it yet, but Daius was a servant of Jyggalag who possesses incredible knowledge, and he had a library that could literally predict every moment to ever happen for eternity. When Jyggalag turned into Sheogorath couldn't bring himself to kill Daius, and so he imprisoned him in Night Point Hollow, making him immortal, where he just sits forever, for an eternity, unable to die, with all the knowledge in the world, knowing how everything is going to play out. And when the cycle continues and Jyggalag eventually takes over and destroys the Shivering Isles during the Grey March, each time when Sheogorath would come back, he would just keep Daius alive, so the knowledge would never truly die. And when you as the player finally break the cycle, Daius refuses to leave. Night Point Hollow is not just his prison, it's his home. There's something so dark and twisted about it, but I love it. He just sits there, unable to tell time, unable to feel pain. He can't die, unable to have any sort of freedom or interaction, and yet there he remains forever, and it's kind of by choice. Haskell says that Daius believes everything is predetermined and predictable. He knows the future, so therefore he refuses to take any action because he believes it will not change anything, which is just gotta be the most torturous thing I could possibly think of. And when the hero of Kvatch finds him, he still helps him even though the hero proves his prediction wrong. There's just something about Daius that has stuck with me since I first played Shivering Isles. And the Castle of Vitharn just feels like a natural extension of this idea. Lost souls, trapped, completely conscious of their mistakes. Mistakes that were honestly pretty innocent when you consider how many others would freeze and panic when their lives were on the line. And they faced the cruelest of punishments, which was just being alone to think about it forever. The second reason I love this quest so much is because it just does a lot of things the original game was too afraid to do or never intended to do. I don't know how Oblivion would have been received back in the day if its game mechanics were more like this than what they ended up being. I'm sure Morrowind fans would probably like it a little bit more, but the cultural buildup from Oblivion to Skyrim not too long after that changed the landscapes of RPGs forever. There are hundreds and thousands of people who are now into RPGs because of Oblivion, and that is myself included. They are now my favorite games of all time, and it started with this. And because it was made a lot more accessible, and yeah, it spammed quest markers to no end, if the entire game didn't have them, I'm not sure where the world of RPGs would be today. I'm glad not all of the Shivering Isles was like this, but it's nice to have aspects outside of the main game that do this. Back then, I'm assuming the mentality was if they have the expansions, they probably played enough of the game that we can challenge them a little bit. Another that comes to mind is the pilgrimage to start off the Knights of the Nine. It's the main reason I don't do the Knights of the Nine all the time, because it's long and tedious, but I'll never forget the first time I did it. It felt like an adventure. If the entire expansions were like that, I think it would feel too disconnected from everything else. It would feel like Oblivion hard mode. But just having a little piece of it be like this, just to show that they could do it, I don't know. I like that. I hope you enjoyed this video if you watched all the way through. I may do more of these single quest dissection things if I stumble upon something in another game that I really enjoy, but this was just a really interesting moment that not a lot of people have really talked about online. And I'd love to know your thoughts if you've played this quest before and if everything seemed different to you, or maybe this is all in my head and I've just rambled on for 40 minutes about nothing. But my name is Ghostboy259 and I saved the Ghosts of Vitharn. Next time, I'll do something else. Thanks for watching.